Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's that time of week again, everybody's favorite segment, the Power Rankings. Guys, got a ton of subs last week and I really appreciate it. If you are not subbed yet, be one of the first 1,000 for your chance. We're going to do a draw when we hit 1,000. We're going to give away a hat of your choice if you're the winner. But guys, if you aren't subbed yet, I do appreciate it. We're trying to hit 1,000. Maybe by the end of the month, maybe by the end of the next month, but it's going to be soon, so make sure you're a part of it. Otherwise, guys, we're going to jump into it. We do this every week on Sunday, right when the Sunday game at night is starting. Dodgers and Padres just getting underway, so we'll talk about that in a minute. But we're going to start at the bottom, and I don't think there's any debate about who is going to be last. Chicago White Sox, just a rough week again for them. 1-2 against Cleveland. They get smashed over the weekend against the Cincinnati Reds. It wasn't really close. Their pitching just got obliterated. When I did my division previews at the beginning of the year, I thought the White Sox were going to be a little bit better than this. I didn't even predict them to come last, and all of you guys were calling me out for that. I've learned my lesson real quick. They are clearly the worst team in the MLB. Giving them a run for their money is the Miami Marlins. They had a tough week. They had the Yankees. They took one win there. They had the Braves over the weekend here. They got one win. They almost had the second win today before Ozuna walked them off. So they had a 2-4 week. Not ideal. Terrible start in terms of record, but I don't know if they're going to really stay here. They've had a rough start. We can all agree with that, but they do have reinforcements on the DL, right? So overall, in a big scheme of picture thing, don't know if they're this bad, but right now, every other team seems to be trying to make a little bit of an effort. I don't know if this team really is going to make too much of an effort. They went 1-2 against Arizona, 1-2 against Toronto this weekend for another back-to-back losing series this week. Colorado just doesn't seem to have the prospects that some of these other teams that we're going to talk about in a minute, those prospects that are at least stepping up. Sure, they have Ryan McMahon. He's making some progress. They have Nolan Jones, who's made impact in game here and there, but no one that's really appears to be the franchise leading guy, at least on the bat. And on the pitching side of things, Kyle Freeland's been looking rough, and he was potentially someone that could be good, but their starters just not doing it either. So Colorado arguably could be worse, but I just think they're picking up a couple of wins here and there. Number 27, I have the Washington Nationals 2-1 against San Fran. So they did win one series this week, and then just watching the game this afternoon against Oakland, they blew a lead. They lose the series to Oakland, a team that, if you look back at last year, was really last place the whole season. So they have some prospects that have done some stuff. We got C.J. Abrams, right? Or Adams. But yeah, other signings just not working out for them. Joey Gallo, been absolutely atrocious, continues to just strike out constantly. I think if it wasn't for Miami, they'd be clearly the worst team in this division. And with that being said, they're a long way from being in a playoff position. Sure, their record isn't too bad. They're hovering around 500, but we know by the end of the season that's not going to be the case. Number 26, we have the Oakland Athletics winning both series this week. I don't even remember when I said that last, but they won them this week. Texas, 2-1, big stuff. And of course, they just beat Washington. So the A's, there's some sign of life in this team, a team that's spent so low here. I talked about it late last year. I took a lot of heat for it. I didn't think of them as the worst team in the MLB. The record, sure, but we're starting to see that this team's young. They have a lot of talented guys, a lot of top draft picks, a lot of guys that went in the first round. And when you're looking at other teams that are probably still haven't talked about, or we're talking about them already, they have at least a future that looks bright. It's not going to be in Oakland, we know that, but they're at least going in the right direction. They're a competitive ball club every day, it seems like, at this point. You got some pitchers that are dominant. They have some bats that are delivering hits. And the A's, back-to-back series wins there. Next up, we do have the Angels. They've had a pretty decent season so far, but 1-2 against Tampa and 1-2 against Boston, losing both series this week is not going to be able to knock them out of this bottom row. Sure, they're close to 500. They're near the top of their division, but I think as we start going along here, if they keep playing this style, it's not going to add up to a bunch of wins. They're losing to teams that are slightly ahead of them. When you're looking at the grand scheme of things and teams that are going to be competing for playoff spots, I don't know if the Angels are going to be a part of it. Right now, they're sticking in the bottom row. Next up, San Francisco Giants. These guys tried to figure out where they are. This is one of the teams I'm not super confident in, but they had a rough week. 1-2 against Washington, 1-2 against Tampa. No sweeps, but they just don't seem to have the team, in my opinion, that's going to go on a huge win streak. So to be able to slowly but surely fall behind the rest of the pace, especially when you're talking about the National League West, I have big concerns for San Francisco. And right now they're borderline bottom row. So that's pretty much dangerous. I don't really see them competing for playoffs, really. I say that a lot, though, and I eat my words. Number 23. Next up, we got St. Louis, 1-2 against Philly, 1-2 against Arizona. Sure, they play both teams that were in the National League Championship last year. They've managed to get one win off of both. We saw Sonny Gray come back this week. He had a pretty outstanding performance. But it's not going to be enough. This team needs to find some wins and needs to find them quickly. They're an aging club that, sure, it's a little bit different club than what we've seen in the past, but they still got Goldschmidt, who's aging, Arenado, who's aging. Goldschmidt's not having a great year. Arenado hit his first home run of the year this week. But the Cardinals are in a division where everyone is younger, everyone's getting better, and they just seem to be falling behind the 8 ball. Sure, they're in the conversation. They're going to potentially move up, but I don't really see them going too low unless they just start selling, which very well could be the case. Number 22, I think the biggest fall on the slate was the Seattle Mariners, and I got a lot of concern for them. Been a slow start, 1-2 against Toronto this week. Over the weekend, they went 1-2 against the Cubs, just slowly getting edged out 3-2 today. Couldn't quite come back in that game. The Mariners, their pitching, it's been pretty good. There's been times where it's just not consistent. And their bats are definitely not consistent. In a division like the American League West, where right now there's no surefire team that's really taken off. We've already talked about 3 teams here. There is potential for them to be right there in the thick of it, in the wild card, but they got to start turning it on and turning it on quick. They have a tough week this week, and it's going to be against 2 teams that are right there in the thick of the playoff race. We've got Texas and Minnesota. This week is going to really start to define whether I am kind of right at number 22 with them, or if we can start moving them back where maybe they were before. Next up, we have Boston, a team that did beat Seattle earlier in the season, and this week they lost bad. Baltimore, they got swept. Division matchup, which Boston needs to try to win as much division games as they can if they're going to have any chance of being talked about in the playoffs right now. Last place on the power rankings in the American League East, losing there, and then they do manage to squeak it out against the Angels, so they're beating teams right now that are below them. They had a little bit of fire early in the year, a nice, tough road trip to start the season that went pretty well for them. This week, they didn't really build off of it. Definitely coming back home, getting swept by Baltimore, not the ideal way to do things. But Boston, they're going to have their work cut out for them. This division's tough, and they got to prove themselves in the division to get back in this conversation. Number 20, we got the New York Mets. They started off awful, right? And maybe I have them a little bit too low considering maybe weighing too much into that. But they had a pretty great week this week. 2-1 against Atlanta, 2-1 against Kansas City. So 4-2 week. I think they're 7-3 over their last 10 after starting 0-4, 0-5. I can't remember exactly. But the Mets are starting to trend in the right direction. The bats somehow are heating up. Pete Alonso, I think he had 3 home runs this week, maybe 4. The guy's been fire. And the Mets starting to close the gap. The one game against Atlanta really proved that the offense does have the capabilities of putting up runs. Whether they can put it all together, I want to see it for another week, especially a division where they have the Phillies, they have the Braves. They got 2 teams that they should be able to beat on. They're very easily should be third in this division. They might start to talk about it. Keep this momentum going, Mets fans, because you could quickly start moving up this board. Number 19, we got the Detroit Tigers. Some people were giving me a little bit of guff last week, having them too low. I still am not quite sold on this team. I'm sure they had a 5-game week, so 1-1 against Pittsburgh. That was a good series. I wish they played 3, that I could see a decider in that match. But they managed to take the second game and come back in that game. So they were on the fence against Pittsburgh, and then they played their own division rivals this week, Minnesota Twins, who had been struggling somewhat. they had been struggling, right? And they lose that series, and they're going to be playing them again next week. So that's going to tell a lot of what Detroit is about. Again, we know it. When teams are in their division, they got to win the games if they're going to be in the playoffs. And right now, Detroit, sure, they're tucking along, but we got some tough teams ahead of them in this division. With the White Sox down and out, it's a 4-team race. Number 18, that is one of those teams. Cleveland, 2-1 against the White Sox, 1-2 against the Yankees. So a 500 week against one of the top teams, and then the absolute worst. You want to see them sweep the White Sox. If you really wanted to see this team excel, you want to see a sweep, but we can't always guarantee sweeps. Winning series, that's the key. But then they go into Yankees, they steal one game and against one of the top teams. So you got to be pretty excited about that. I am still a little concerned about the depth of this team, but so far they have one of the best run differentials in the league. They're proving me wrong, and as they continue to do that, they will continue to move up the board. But I want to see more from this team. It's April, guys. I still got to see more. Number 17, we got the Royals. I've moved them up quite a bit on this board. A lot of that has to do with how their pitching went this week. Not only this week, all season so far, they have one of the best, if not the best, ERA from starting pitchers in the entire league. I think I touched on this last week. I think it's below 2 and must still be there. They went 3-0 against Houston. And then they went, 1-2 against the Mets. So hot team. They're starting to find their way. And a sweep against an ex-ALCS champions for many years. That's a pretty big sweep. So we're seeing this is a change. The Royals, I don't think since the initiation of this power rankings have been this high on the board. So we're definitely seeing a new era of Royals. If their rotation can maintain that, that's one of the most deadly things you can have in terms of baseball. Is this 5 solid rotation that's keeping the scoring in, keeping your team in ball games any which way. This division could be up for theirs. Number 16, I got the Cincinnati Reds, and sure, they smashed the Chicago White Sox, but I'm not going to hold too much weight into that. It's going to be important to see them continue to build win streaks, especially when they have a week like next week. They're playing Seattle. They're playing the Angels. These are teams that right now I have pegged as being lesser than the Reds. They need to build off smashing these guys. They lose a series earlier in the week, like to the Milwaukee Brewers, a team that they're going to be chasing all season long for that division crown. And if the Reds want to be taken seriously and continue to move up, they have to beat the worst teams, and they have to win some of these series, especially against top road teams. You got to win some of them. Or else you're never going to get that far. Next up, we got Toronto Blue Jays. I think one of the only teams that on this board that had a winning week that I actually moved down. They went 2-1 against Seattle, 2-1 against Colorado, but I wasn't happy with what I saw. Vladdy Guerrero continues to struggle at the plate, just not hitting well. We saw some of the offense come to life. Varsho, who had been struggling, hit a grand slam and another home run in the series against Colorado here. But overall, their bats are just not what we're really used to. The top of their order, Springer, Bichette, all these guys just not getting the clicking you want to see from a team that's in this AL East. You got Yankees, you got Baltimore, all guys with offensive power that are seeming to be putting it together. Right now, Jays have relied a lot on pitching. So we want to see them steal some wins with their offense. They're going to play the Yankees again this week. It's a big series. I'm interested how that's going to go. Next up, 14. We got the Twins. This is one team that struggled with placing probably the most on the board. I think I had them as high as 7th at one point. They went 1-2 against the Dodgers. They beat Detroit. I think they're better than they're performing right now, but I know I take a lot of heat for that, so I'm trying to kind of adjust. I still think they beat the Jays last year in the playoffs. They're just a little bit of a struggle. It's going to come down to the division. They beat Detroit. That's huge. Playing Detroit again this week. If they can start to build off that, they're 4th in the division if you're looking at standings right now, but overall, I think they're the team that most of these teams are going to have to compete their best baseball against, especially in that Central. So I want to see how that plays out. Number 13, got the Tampa Bay Rays, 2-1 against the Angels, 2-1 against San Fran. Rays just continue to be the Tampa Bay Rays. I'm not going to move them down when they're winning, and they're playing all right. Their offense shows up, their pitching shows up, and they're winning series, and that's basically what Tampa Bay Rays baseball has been about for a decade now. I shouldn't say decades, because like 2 decades ago they were awful, right? But it's been pretty consistent with what Tampa Bay is all about. Next man up seems to be happening again this year. very well flirting with the top two rows. And it's only a matter of time because right now number 12 is holding on by the skin of their teeth. I know a lot of people are not going to agree with this, but I got a little bit of confidence after this weekend beating the ex-World Series champs, the Rangers. Rangers are beat up. Astros are also beat up. This is a division that is up in the air because the two best teams in it are beat up. And the Astros managing to keep going. Sure, they got swept early in the week. They bounced back. I like to see a team be able to bounce back when this kind of thing happens. Altuve had a weekend that kind of player is going to have, and if he's carrying it forward, this rotation is only going to figure it out. This bullpen is not as bad as it's been, right? Hader's, got a 6 ERA right now. That is not going to stay that way. So the Astros are going to be number 12 for now. Their record aside, they're number 12. Number 11, you got the Philadelphia Phillies. 2-1 against St. Louis. 1-2 against the Pirates. The Phillies seems to be a pattern for this team now. I'm starting to pick up on some patterns, definitely early in the season. Phillies seem to struggle early in the season, so I'm not going to put a lot of weight into the early season struggles, but the pitching, 0-3 Wheeler, it's got to be a little bit concerning. Even though his ERA has been good, they're just not getting the run support when the pitching's there, and vice versa. There's been a lot of one-run games for these Phillies. They're going to sort it out. I'm not too concerned about them. But whether they're going to be a top row team this year, I'm not sure, but that we've seen that anything that resembles that as of right now. Number 10. This is another one I'm really a little bit unsure about, but they're winning. They beat Seattle this weekend, and a nice 500 week. 1-2 against San Diego. Maybe the resurgence of Slam Diego. We'll talk about that in a sec, but the Cubs are just being consistent. And when it comes to a long season of baseball, consistency will get you a long way. And I've talked about it a lot in the bottom rows that they're inconsistent. Well, the Cubs seem to be consistent, and that's what you want. And don't really have much else to say about that now. Number 9. This has got to be the highest the Pirates have ever been. And took some slack for it last week. I wasn't sold because they hadn't had really a true tests. But this week, it's a 5-game week. They went 1-1 with Detroit. They beat Philly, and to me, that was a big milestone for this team that's just never been able to get out of their own way, and it seems like their players are confident and getting it done. Brian Reynolds being a beast. You got O'Neill Cruz just being great. Brian Hayes, this team is starting to form, sure, and we talked about it with Oakland a little bit earlier. When these young prospects that have just been drafted high and high again, they start coming up together, they start gaining confidence. And they're just talent all around them. I think the Pirates are that, and we might have a for real team here that is very competitive. But this Central is not shaping up any way in which I thought it might. Number 8, got the San Diego Padres, also known as the Slam Diego Padres. They seem to be back in full force this week. 2-1 against the Cubs, and then 1-1 so far against the Dodgers. They're probably playing right now, exactly, but some comeback wins this week, some massive offensive comeback wins, especially the one game against the Cubs. I think they were down 7. Of course, we're concerned about their pitching. It's been a little bit iffy since last year even. It's been iffy. I don't know if they'll sort it out. Maybe this is a high point for the Padres, but their offense is definitely firing on all cylinders, and that can be dangerous and keep you in the conversation. They've done well against the Dodgers too, which is, as you know, one of our top teams on this ranking board every week for years. So they've held their own so far against the Dodgers, splitting that season series, I believe, so far, 3-3. I guess the rubber match is today. So that's interesting. Number 7, same division. Got the Arizona Diamondbacks. Not off to the greatest start, but 2-1 against Colorado, 2-1 against St. Louis. Bottom teams winning the series. And I talked about this last week. Arizona seems to have the best rotation, I think, in all of the MLB. And it shows in a week like this when maybe they didn't play their best, not everything coming together, they win both series. And when you have a rotation like that can just win series when not everything is working out your way, you're going to be in a top team. And I think at the time last year when they made the World Series, a lot of people were talking about it as a fluke. I didn't see it coming. Maybe no one really saw it coming, but now we're starting to look at this team as a whole. It's starting to make a little bit of sense. They're definitely a competitive ball club. When you're looking at a 5-game series, a 7-game series, a 3-game series, they're going to be in it every single time. Number 6, moving down a couple of spots. They had a losing week and they lost to Oakland. So that's going to add some salt in the wounds. A team that they've probably beaten up on for a number of years now. Texas Rangers had a 2-4 week in their division. Not exactly what you want when you're trying to repeat as the champs. And we talked about it last week. They were hanging on up there. They're dealing with some injuries. Young was out. Their pitching is not exactly the same pitching that made it there last year, but they're seeing some young guys. They got some young talent on here, of course, with Evan Carter making a big impact on this team so far this season. Same with late last year. The team has it. I still think they're very well top team, so I'm leaving them at number 6. Number 5, we got the Baltimore Orioles. The Orioles started the week off big. Everyone after that started getting super hyped for Jackson Holiday making his debut. And it was pretty dud-like, but he managed to get his first hit, his last at-bat of the weekend. So he got his first hit. The Orioles managed a nice comeback win today to not get swept by the Milwaukee Brewers, guys. And ever since Adley Rutschman has been called up, the Orioles have not been swept, and that continues this week. So the Orioles kind of being consistent, 4-2 week, losing against a top team, not too concerned. They're winning a nice sweep in the division. I want to see them play some teams like my Jays and, of course, the Yankees. Number 4, these guys continuing to impress me week after week. Don't know what else to say. I think when Burns got shipped out, a lot of people were concerned that they're not going to be top team, and it seems to be working out very well for them. The offense has been there, and that's always been what I've found held them back over the past couple of years. We always saw Burns and we saw Woodruff carrying the team for wins, but the offense was never doing it. It seems to be a different kind of Milwaukee Brewers team this year, and I'm excited. I'm here for it. They've been in the shorts almost every week so far, so that's been fun to watch as well. Number 3, top in the AL, I got the New York Yankees. They just didn't have like a week that's going to blow you away, but it's continuing to win. They've won every series so far this year. 2-1 against Miami. Sure, they could have swept that one, but they lost the last game of that series. And then 2-1 against Cleveland. There's a doubleheader in there. Not going to put a whole lot of weight in it, but overall their offense has been juggernaut. And their pitching, on the other hand, has surprised me more than I expected. Of course, they always have a strong bullpen. And I know if they're in the hunt, they're going to be a strong team, especially come playoff time, because come trade deadline, come whatever, they'll do whatever it takes. They'll add the pieces they need, and they are going to be a powerhouse. So right now, the Yankees, I think, are the team to chase in the American League. So that leaves us to number 2. I got the Atlanta Braves. Losing to the Mets, it hurts, right? A team that was kind of hurting, struggling an early start, they had a chance to really beat them down in the standings, beat them down in confidence. They missed that opportunity, but they kind of got a little bit of a rebound this weekend against Miami. They had a shot to lose the series, though, coming into today, and it was a rubber match. Miami was up late. Ozuna hits that 3-run shot in the 9th to give Atlanta the win. So there is a little bit of concerns. We saw Spencer Strider go down this week, and he's out for the season. So a little bit of concern in Atlanta. I think at this point they are dethroned from number 1, because I think this is the team to beat right now across the MLB. It's probably cliche. Ohtani, Freeman, Betts, all these guys, they're getting Walker Buehler back. He's going to be back before we know it. It's rotation, top 3 in the league. Batting order, top 3 in the league at least, right? So overall, the Dodgers, I think, are the team to beat. And I don't think there's too much debate there. Sure, you could probably maybe debate Atlanta, New York, but either way, that's how I have it. Let me know what you guys think. Where do you agree? Where am I just completely out to lunch? And guys, thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, all that fun stuff, and we will see you for that next video.